Thank you for this opportunity for me to talk to you about pig olfaction. My name is Sarah-Lina, and I'm employed at the Innovation Center for Organic Farming, which is located in Denmark. And as you can see from the quote that I put up here on the first slide, it's from the children's books called Charlotte's Web. Even within popular children's book, the well-developed sense of smell and the importance of this smell to the animal is acknowledged. So that's why it wasn't just surprising, but very surprising to my co-author Maria and I to learn how little we within the scientific community have actually touched upon this highly relevant area of research. And that's also why I find it essential that I start my talk by going through why pig olfaction is actually interesting. Well, first of all, it's interesting because of the role olfaction plays in the life of pigs. The sense of smell develops early in pigs, and it's essential for their survival. And that is, for instance, because pigs, they use the sense of smell for recognizing the mother sow, for identifying group mates, for finding feed, and for learning about their surroundings. Now, this well-developed sense of smell combined with the way in which we house commercial pigs, it often looks like on the picture here, I believe raises concern for the welfare of the animals under human care. And in EU alone, there are about 146 million farm pigs. Pigs in commercial barns, they're exposed to a high intensity of odors. For instance, ammonia is very common in pig barns. They're also exposed to a variety of odors, such as disinfectants, feed, blood, the smell of humans, sulfur, and so on. And some of these odors the pigs may actually try to avoid in nature, like the smell of humans. And lastly, usually we also house a large number of animals under the same roof. And consequently, the pigs, they will be exposed to the smell of a large number of conspecifics, many more than they're likely to encounter in nature. And with this in mind, I want to read the aims of our review. So firstly, we wanted to explore available literature on olfaction and olfactory abilities in pigs. Then we wanted to highlight the potential risks for animal welfare that the lacking knowledge about pig olfaction poses within the industry. And lastly, we wanted to highlight ways to utilize odors in pig management and control, and areas which still need further study. And based on these, propose ways to utilize pigs' sense of smell in the daily management of the animals. And now we learned that not many studies concern the topic of olfaction in pigs. And the majority so far have focused on aspects of smell and palatability of feed with the aim of increasing feed intake in the animals during certain periods of the life of the pig, and pheromones and optimizing reproduction. And that means that the aspects so far have been focused on increasing production and farm economy. And these topics were not the main focus of our review. So now to really start off the talk, I just want to mention a few facts about the olfactory organ of pigs. Pigs, they're born with a functional vomeronasal organ, which does not appear to have undergone involution, in contrast to, for instance, the vomeronasal organ of dogs. And the olfactory bulb of pigs is located in the front part of the pig brain, and it constitutes a relatively large part of the brain. So that's 7% as compared to, for instance, 0.01% in humans. And also the pig has 1,113 functional olfactory receptor genes, again compared to 347 in humans. So just based on these few facts, we can conclude two things. One is that there are differences between the sensory organs of humans and pigs, but we don't really know what the consequences are of these differences. Like, do they mean that pigs, they have a better sense of smell than we do? Or do they simply mean that we are maybe able to smell different things? We don't know, but we know that there are differences. And so we must assume that the sense of smell is different in pigs than in humans. And we should not simply draw parallels between the two species, as we often do, for instance, within medical research. So maybe just to be on the safe side and take our precautions, we should assume that pigs, they have a more sensitive sense of smell than we do. But that's one thing we can conclude. There are differences, and we don't know the consequences of these. And the second thing is that there is no doubt that pigs, they do have a well-developed sense of smell. Go on talking about olfaction in pigs. We know they use olfaction for a lot of purposes, for instance, to forage for food, like these pigs on the screen. They are male pigs foraging Jerusalem artichokes. But there are still many questions that we can ask, like, how does the sense of smell develop in pigs? How good is the olfactory acuity? What are they able to smell? And what odors do they find attractive or aversive? And probably most important, how can we utilize this knowledge to benefit the welfare of our farmed pigs? And this is some of what I want to talk about now. So firstly, how does the sense of smell develop and function in pigs? I've already talked about a bit about this already. The sense of smell developed early in pigs. Their vomeronasal organ is functional already at birth, and within 12 hours after being born, the piglet is actually able to recognize the mother sow. Later in life, the pig also relies heavily on the sense of smell. They use it for recognizing group mates, and when the piglet starts to ingest solids, it will learn from the mother and group mates which items are suitable for eating. And that is to avoid trial and error learning, so thereby lowering the risk of the piglet ingesting something toxic or potentially harmful. They also use the sense of smell for sexual communication and to learn about the surroundings in general. So there's no doubt that the sense of smell is central for the survival and fitness of the pig. But how well is the scent olfactory acuity? So when compared to other mammal species such as humans, squirrel monkeys, and pigtail macaques, pigs, they have a lower detection threshold for ethyl acetate and ethanol, and these are just examples. But what that means is that pigs, they are able to detect these odors at much lower concentrations than, for instance, we are as humans. And also, like in some other mammal species, there are indications of inter-individual variability among pigs. Among their olfactory acuity, and that just means that some pigs, they will perform better in tests compared to other individuals. And in a study by Crony et al., the authors found indications that pigs that were provided with a visual cue, which was orange and green, or an olfactory cue, which was almond and coconut, they actually performed equally well in a test where they had to locate a feed source in novel surroundings. And based on that, the authors suggest that visual and olfactory cues, they are equally salient to pigs in learning and foraging situations. And now you can say, yes, very well, the pigs have a well-developed sense of smell. We can agree on that. And so what? Why should we care about olfaction in pigs? It's interesting, but why care? And here I'd like to argue that considering the way we house pigs for commercial production, it can look like this. It's often many animals in little space, and in an environment with poor olfactory stimulation and usually a poor air quality in general. This system we then combine with a species that relies very heavily on the sense of smell and has a high olfactory acuity and a well-developed olfactory organ. I'd say that this type of animal and such a housing system, it just doesn't seem compatible. And that raises concern that we have a welfare problem with respect to our farmed pigs. And that is why I find it so important that we do care about olfaction. Now, some of the odors at these farms, they are not simply odors. Some of them actually appear to be perceived as aversive and may be potentially harmful to the animals. Ammonia, for instance, is very common in pig barns, and a study has shown that in a number of EU countries, the ammonia levels rises to levels or concentrations that could maybe cause concern for the welfare of the animals. So they've recorded temporary levels of 44 to 58 parts per million. And in 2 studies, Jones et al., they examined the effect of chronic and acute exposure of pigs to ammonia levels of about 40 to 43 parts per million. And although the studies weren't the results of the studies weren't clear, they did actually find indications that chronic exposure to these levels of ammonia are damaging to the, and maybe damaging to the olfactory organ and thus to the sensory capabilities of pigs. So that's of course a problem. And also if we look at studies on humans working in pig farms, they found that as many as 50% of the workers experience respiratory diseases. So I think that there are definitely reasons to concern about emissions in pig barns. And with regards to other smells that pigs they find aversive, studies show that nursing and newly weaned piglets find the smell of amyl acetate, orange and sour milk aversive. But it's not clear whether the aversive reaction was caused by the odor per se or by the novelty of the odor. Duggins et al., they found a shorter latency to approach a novel enrichment object in growers compared to weaners and sucklers. And that's why we suggest that there could be a novelty age effect in the reaction seen towards the odors that I mentioned before. And in accordance in our ongoing study, which Maria will tell you more about later, we saw no aversive reactions in finishing pigs that were exposed to a variety of odors. Again, suggesting that the reaction seen toward amyl acetate, orange and sour milk could be caused by an age novelty effect. Now, other odors pigs appear to perceive as being attractive. And we've chosen to focus on odors, complex odors of non-social origin. And not many studies concern odors of non-social origin. And in the studies that we found, not many or a very limited number have control for taste in the studies, meaning that often an object was odorized and then the pig had access to the object, so they could bite and lick the object and not simply smell the odor. But what the studies have found is that in one study, they provided pigs with access to a rope scented with garlic and an unscented rope. Pigs, they preferred to spend time interacting with the scented rope. And in another study by Novicki et al., they provided pigs with access to natural aromas and synthetic aromas. And they could see that pigs, they preferred to spend time near the natural aromas. And then they further applied these natural aromas to an object and provided pigs access to that object and an odorless object. And again, pigs, they preferred to interact with the odorized object. And both these studies with garlic and natural aromas, when the authors then resprayed the objects with the odors, that reinstated the pig's interest in the objects. So collectively, these studies, they actually suggest that odors may be used to increase the enriching qualities of a material, and also that odors may be used to add novelty to an already existing enrichment object. So within the area of pig enrichment, odors, they definitely hold a potential. And that's particularly because the odors won't interfere with the functioning of the housing system, in contrast to, for instance, applying large amounts of straw that can often be problematic. Now, I'd really like to tell you why pigs perceive some odors or appear to perceive some odors as attractive and others as aversive. But that's really not known at this time. We don't know if there is something, certain characteristics that make odors appear attractive and others aversive, or whether it has something to do with the concentration of the odors. So unfortunately, I can't tell you that. Other odors, again, pigs appear to have some calming effects on pigs. In 1998, Bradshaw et al. They provided lavender straw to pigs during transit, and that was done in an attempt to reduce stress during transit and to lower travel sickness. And the measure of stress was salivary cortisol, and the authors didn't find any effect on this measure. So lavender straw didn't appear to have any effects on the level of stress, but they did see indications of lowered severeness of travel sickness during transit. And actually the calming effects of lavender has also been shown for laboratory rodents and shelter dogs. Other studies, they've looked into the effect of prenatal flavoring of maternal diets. And West India, they provided anethol in the diet to sows late postpartum and during lactation. And they could see a trend towards lower cortisol levels post-weaning, and also less vocalization the day after weaning when piglets, they were provided with anethol either in the diet or in the air after being weaned. So there are studies, or some studies, that suggest that maybe some odors could be beneficial during stressful situations. And there may actually even be a potential that pigs, they can be trained to associate odors with a pleasant experience. So Dudding et al., they found that ringing a bell using the bell as an unconditioned stimuli while distributing seeds to nursing piglets had a long-lasting effect. And from studies of humans, and you probably know it yourself, we associate certain odors with certain memories. And there is a recent study that indicates that the same may be true for dogs that have to perform a spatial task. So if we could somehow train pigs to associate certain odors with a pleasant experience or a pleasant memory, then maybe this could be used in pig management. So for instance, when we have to move pigs within barns to a new section, applying these odors could maybe be used to avoid stressing the animals and also to lower the risks of injury to both the animals and the people handling the animals. Another area where it could be interesting to guide pigs using odors is with regards to pig elimination behavior. Now, I work with organic pig production. So what you see here is an outdoor run for organic grower pigs. And this is a nice and clean run, and it's clearly ready for a new group of weaner pigs to enter. And a huge challenge within organic production, as well as in conventional pig productions, is then to get the pigs to eliminate in the intended areas of the run or pig pen. So on this picture, we would like the pigs to eliminate on the drained or slatted flooring in the back of the pen, in the back of the picture. But what we often see is that the pigs, they will eliminate everywhere else. And here that means they will commonly eliminate on the solid flooring. And that's a problem, among other due to the increased emissions of ammonia when pigs, they defecate and urinate on the solid floor. So when pigs, they eliminate there will be a larger surface area covered with manure. And the larger the surface area, the larger the emission of ammonia. And that's, of course, problematic with respect to the environmental impact of the production. It's also problematic because the solid area is actually intended to function as a lying resting area for the pigs. But when it becomes soil, the animals find it unattractive. And also, when pigs, they eliminate there, the farmer will have to allocate workers to clean the pen manually. So there will be an increased workload. And just in general, a soiled pen and soiled animals, that just doesn't look nice. And in the review from 2019, Andersen et al. Found that pigs, they do not eliminate at random. And the authors couldn't show a clear pattern in the behavior either. But if the behavior is not random, it must be possible for us somehow to control pig elimination. We know that pigs, for instance, they prefer to eliminate away from the nest, and piglets as young as 24 hours of age have been observed to leave the nest to eliminate. So clearly the behavior isn't random. Other studies, they found that often exploration or sniffing would precede pig eliminations. So in 2 studies, they found that 50 to 70% of the observed eliminations were preceded by either sniffing or exploring. And therefore, we suggest that maybe odors could be used to stimulate this behavior. And if this is the case, then maybe we can use odors to direct the pig eliminations to the intended pen areas. Yet another area where we would like to be able to control pig behavior or guide pig behavior is with respect to the roaming of feral pigs. And feral pigs, they can be a challenge. Pigs, they are omnivorous animals that spend most of their active time exploring and searching for food. And feral pigs, they like a variety of agricultural crops. And this can be problematic because of the pigs' rooting behavior and trampling of agricultural land, and can simply destroy the areas. So if you take a look at this sow, she's an organic sow. And as you can see, she's nose ringed, and she's actually well fed because she's lactating. And still, take a look at the area around her. She's completely destroyed the grass cover in her paddock, and she's managed to dig quite deep into the ground of the paddock. And this is just a small corner that you can see, but the entire paddock was looked like this. So if you look at her, then think about what a group of feral pigs that are not ringed and not well fed, what they'll do to a field of agricultural crops. The answer is they will do a lot of damage. And the study from Texas showed that the damage caused by feral pigs amounted to about $52 million a year. Aside from the economic costs, African swine fever has also caused concern for the roaming of feral pigs in the recent years. And the virus is not treatable, and it can be related with a high mortality of pigs. And these are just some of the reasons why control of feral pigs is of interest. So the question is now, can we use odors as a mean of control? And we suggest that to prevent pigs from entering an area where we don't want them to be, or to prevent them from eating certain crops, maybe aversive odors could hold a potential, as they may function as a repellent. And we actually discovered that there are some odor repellents on the market, and that these include, for instance, the highly concentrated smells of rotten eggs, salts of fatty acid, and therum, which is a bitter tasting fungicide. But unfortunately, the effectiveness of these repellents has not been documented, so we don't know if this strategy would work in practice. When the pigs have already entered an area where we don't want them to be, we suggest that maybe attractive odors could hold a larger potential, as they could function maybe as to lure the pigs into traps or lure them to consume baits. So there may be a potential there. These were some of the aspects of pig olfaction that I wanted to share with you. Now, to finish off the presentation, I would like to once again go through the aims of our review. So what we wanted was to explore currently available literature on olfaction and olfactory abilities in pigs. And as I mentioned in the beginning of my talk, the main focus so far has been on smell in relation with feed and palatability and pheromones and reproductions. But we actually discovered that some research has touched upon other areas of pig olfaction, and that these included the physiology of the olfactory organ of the pig, the development of the olfactory organ, olfactory acuity, aversive and attractive odors, As I mentioned, ammonia, for instance, was considered aversive, and potentially attractive odors that may work as enrichment, may add enriching properties to materials. But it's only with respect to the physiology of the olfactory organ that some information appears to be conclusive, although we don't know the consequences, as I said, of the structure of the olfactory organ for the sense of smell of pigs. That's still unclear. The second aim was to highlight potential risks for animal welfare that the lacking knowledge about pig olfaction poses within the industry. And I've called that concerns for animal welfare. And some of the welfare concerns that we raise in our review are, for instance, that pigs, they're exposed to a number of potentially aversive odors, and often these are present at high concentrations. And the pigs, they're unable to move away from aversive odors or towards lower concentrations of them within pig barns. And also, there are not many attractive odors present in commercial pig production. You could argue that, well, there is at least the smell of feed, which must be perceived as attractive. And this is true, but consider, for instance, restrictively fed pregnant sows, like those on the picture here. Is the constant smell of feed really beneficial for these animals when they're unable to gain access to the feed? We also see that often many animals are housed in the same barn section, and that means that each pig has to process and relate to odors from many conspecifics. And could this maybe be stressful to the animals? At least there are a variety of odors, but is there actually any olfactory complexity in the environment of pigs? There are many odors, yes, but most are likely aversive, and the odor composition is rather constant throughout the life of the pig. And lastly, we also ask the question, how is the lack of olfactory stimulation affecting the sense of smell of pigs? We don't know that. And these are some of the welfare concerns that we raise. The last aim was to highlight ways to utilize odors in pig management and control, and areas which still need further research. And then based on these proposed ways to utilize pig sense of smell in the daily management of the animals. And I've simply summed that aim up to where to go from here. And here I'd like to just address two questions that I find important for future research to focus on. So the first is the welfare of our farm pigs threatened? I think it's crucial that we address this question. In our barns, air quality standards are most often based on levels that are considered acceptable with respect to the workers, human workers, being in the barns. The pigs, they are there 24/7, and the head level is much lower, so much closer to the flooring and the slurry than the head of a human. And we know that at least one study has found indications that high concentrations of ammonia may be damaging to the olfactory organ of pigs. So we really need studies that investigate what level of ammonia and air quality in general is acceptable with respect to the pigs being housed there in the pig barns, and not only with respect to the humans working there.
Sarah-Lina, there's 2 minutes remaining.
Perfect. Yes, I am just about done. And the second question is, can we use odors as a management tool? And we have actually already started to touch upon or address this question in our ongoing study, Smell This. Yes, and in this project, we are considering whether odors may be used to enrich the life of pigs. And I will not go into details about this study, as Maria, she will talk more about the studies and the results later in this session on positive animal welfare. So now I just want you to recall the central role olfaction plays in the life of pigs, and in connection with this, then imagine the corresponding impact that a positive olfactory environment could have for the future welfare of our farm pigs. and then finish off and say thank you very much for your attention. And I'm glad that it ended up working with the presentation.
Thank you so much. Very interesting talk. Nice pictures as well. Any questions from the audience? Yes, Ruth.
Hello, very nice talk and good topic. Ruth Newberry from Norwegian University of Life Sciences. I just wondered if you think that there can be an enrichment value of providing odors without having any consequence of the odor, such as a taste followed by a flavor or an ingestion, and then making an association that it's good. Is there any point in having the odors by themselves?
Yes.
As enrichment.
Yeah. Actually, I think that there might be, yes. And Maria will touch more on this topic in her talk later. But we did actually see some behaviors that we believe may be positive when pigs were exposed to odors that they couldn't get, but they couldn't get access to the source, so they couldn't lick or taste it, only smell it.
It is one quick question at the back.
Hi. First, I just want to congratulate you because I think, well, working in a big barn, you realize that in fact there are a lot of smells, and if you smell them, surely animals that have more developed senses could do it too, like pigs. So, and then I read a little bit about how to use smell in order to reduce stress, and I read quite a lot of papers related to anethol, which is the active substance of anise star, the spice. I don't know if you have read anything about that, and if so, do you know why anethol has been used? Is there anything in the chemistry of anethol that is alluring to pigs?
The study I mentioned about Ostindia, they actually used anethol in the diet as I said, for prenatal flavoring of the diet. And they could also see this effect of lowered cortisol levels and lowered vocalization. So signs that it could maybe reduce stress. I don't know exactly what it is about anethol. I'm sorry, I can't answer that question or that part of your question.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we have to wrap this up.